Hello, my loves, and welcome to another episode of The Conscious Approach to Stress and Anxiety with myself, your host, Becky Evans, and founder of Emotional Health School. And I'm joining you here today from my broken camper van, as it now seems to be a bit of a tradition to record the conscious approach from here. So start as we mean to go on. And in today's episode, we'll be answering the question, how is being busy suppressing your stress and your anxiety? I'm not even sure if that makes grammatical sense, but we will roll with it because this episode is really inspired by every woman out there, including a former version of myself, who has this one reoccurring thought in her head, this one thought that swoops back around, and the thought just keeps swooping in and sabotaging us whenever we have an opportunity to feel our feelings. Whenever there's an opportunity to truly nourish our body, to truly nourish our soul, whenever we have a chance to be truly embodied. And the thought that comes to our mind is, I'm too busy. I'm too busy to have time for myself. I'm too busy to sit in stillness. I'm too busy to meditate. I'm too busy to focus on my healing right now. Saying now is not the right time, or I'm not ready. I know it. We've all been there. And yes, personally, at this point in my journey, I do identify as someone who is spiritual, who is healing, who really devotes her life to listening to her emotions. But at the same time, I am a recovering workaholic. I'm a recovering binge drinker, and I'm just generally a recovering productivity queen because, I used to work 14-hour days to get my promotion. I used to stay up till 5, 6 a.m. on the weekend, drinking alcohol to numb my feelings. And then during the week, I would do 3 HIIT classes a week. And I'd sort of spend 50% of my time homeless or living out of boxes just because I was constantly moving to try and achieve more and more and more, which is a lot of desire programming, but we can talk about that in a different episode. The point is that busyness used to be my middle name. And for those of you who have just tuned into this episode today, welcome. Like I mentioned, my name's Becky, and I am a stress and anxiety coach. And I help people through their busyness, through their stress, through their anxiety. And I use conscious methods to help people remember who they were before all of these emotional patterns, before all of these busyness programs, before we started to tell this lie to ourselves that we are busy all of the time. And I know what you might be thinking. I am genuinely busy, and I'm with you. We live in a society where, as women especially, there is this expectation to carry and grow a freaking human inside of us whilst working, whilst supporting our parents as they get older, whilst cleaning and cooking. And hey, men don't have it that easy either. But anyway, I digress. The point being is, you have this thought of I'm too busy, and then there is evidence to support that because there is just this never ending of list of life stuff to do. So you end up putting off any time for balance, you put off any time for emotional healing. And so the cycle of stress and anxiety really continues. And it's really just recognizing that this thought is keeping us stuck. And if you feel like I've just exposed one of your deep programs here, this episode is definitely for you, because today, my friends, we're going to dive into this exact question. How is being busy keeping you in your stress and your anxiety? Revealing this pattern, which I've seen and I've witnessed and I've experienced so many times, and really revealing it for what it really is by sharing 3 key concepts with you today. And if at any point you think, oh, this lady from the internet, she gets me, she gets my situation, and you want to explore further into this weird, wonderful, beautiful world of emotional healing, because quite frankly, you have had enough of this stress, busyness, and anxiety, please do not hesitate to DM me on Instagram. You can find me there at Emotional Health School. And please DM me the words podcast busy. That's at Emotional Health School with the words podcast busy, BUSR, BUSY, and I will personally message you back. It'd be really great to get to know you, to see how I can help. And yeah, really, I just hope that this episode helps all of the busy ladies out there to see that there is light and there is calm at the end. And sometimes this can feel like a never-ending tunnel, but I promise you there is light at the end of it. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first concept I would like to shine a light on is urgency culture. And this is something that I really briefly touched on in the intro, which is around the expectations that are placed on us. And it's important to remember this because so often we play it down. So often we try and hold it all together because Susan next door is managing everything, so why shouldn't I? And sometimes we forget to sort of zoom out and see the bigger picture, which is that we need to start seeing all of these expectations around us that are so unnatural. You know, the expectation to pick up the phone instantly, the expectation to answer all of our notifications instantly, the expectations to have and achieve things and be successful, all of these phone calls, getting things done now, 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 now. And, you know, the expectation to not be quote unquote emotional when all of these expectations are not instantly met and they feel like too much. Even though we've been taught to expect them, we live in a culture where everything is expected urgently, and therefore, to live up to this expectation, we may start to subconsciously fill our lives with being busy to meet this never-ending expectation. And we need to start seeing that these expectations are really ruining us. And I'm here to remind you that life, that our goal is fulfillment, is to feel good. That is why we are here. You know, anything we want to achieve in life is really a process. There are cycles, and some cycles are short and some cycles are longer. And so often we may give up or we may feel defeated when we're actually 95% of the way there. We've done all of the work, but then we get so lost in these expectations and not getting where we want to so quickly. You know, maybe we've tried something 198 times and you were meant to achieve it on the 199th time because we have this urgency culture within us. And there's so many sort of ancient ideologies out there, whether it's the yantra calendar, whether it's karma or numerology, you know, all of these ideologies show us that life unfolds in exactly the way it's meant to, at exactly the pace it is meant to. And for us, you know, we can sow the seeds of intention and, of course, take aligned action. But when we're in this culture of go, 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 it's not sustainable. You know, we are humans and we are not robots, and we don't have to do anything. And that's what we can anchor on. You know, we can anchor on the fact that we don't have to do anything, but we can also anchor on our values, our intentions. You know, do we want to be a better partner? Do we want to be a better parent, a better work person? You know, as long as we're taking aligned action within that direction of our intention, then we are always on the right path, and no matter what pace it unfolds. And we don't need to be everyone to everything instantly. And the reason I say this is, for me, you know, these expectations weighed so heavy and controlled me for such a long time, which is what kept me really trapped in my busyness until I realized that I would only be truly free. I would only be able to be there for those who I loved when I challenged these expectations. And as long as I can authentically say in my heart that I feel like I'm being a good person, then there's no need to constantly try and stay on top of those expectations which control our lives. Because a lot of the time when we are programmed to be in this urgency culture to meet these expectations, then we can fall into a trap of feeling guilty when we don't meet them, or we can fall in a trap of shame. So when we can let go of these expectations, that's freedom, baby. That's where we want to get to. So I really wanted to talk about urgency culture as the first topic for today. So the second topic or concept that I would love for us to talk about together is really understanding and redefining busyness as a state. And you may need to stay with me on this one. So what do I mean when I say busyness is a state? Or what is our state to begin with, right? So our state is how we're feeling on the inside, whether that's conscious or not, because we're not always connected to our state. We're not always aware. Our state is the feelings that is driving everything that we do. And our state is not permanent. It can be changed because it's simply an energy that needs to move through us. So what I've come to learn through my own experiences and working with clients is that busyness is really a state. Now, if we use our logical brains here, which I really do not encourage that often, because I teach people to come out of their thinking minds, but we'll make an exception here for the purpose of this example. There are so many CEOs out there of huge companies who work 20-hour days, who don't feel busy. There are mums of 4 who work 3 jobs who are likely tired, but they don't feel busy. There are people out there who are training for a marathon, meal prepping, getting ready to climb Everest and travel Antarctica all within the next year, catching their own fish, and they don't feel busy. You might be starting to get my point here, which is that I'd really like to encourage you to look at being busy in a totally different way. Busyness shouldn't be measured by the amount of things that we need to do on our to-do list. Busyness is more our capacity to hold that many things, our capacity to hold all of the different emotions attached to the amount of things that we have to do on a very deep subconscious level. And I'll repeat that again for the ones in the back. Busyness is measured by our capacity to navigate the things rather than the amount of things that we have. I'll let that sink in for a second. So essentially feeling busy, it's not measured by the amount of things that we do. So if that's the case, why do I feel busy all of the time? Why do I not want to feel it? Feeling busy is something that we are subconsciously attached onto. Because of this urgency culture that I mentioned earlier, busyness really, on a deep level, gives us a sense of importance. It gives us a sense of pride in what we do, because in consciousness work, vibrationally, pride feels good. Pride feels really good. And we want to be proud of what we have done and what we have achieved. And we want more of that pride, a sense of pride in our work, in our social life, in our parenthood. And that's so beautiful to live a life that we're proud of. But where the issue comes in is when our worth is attached to that busyness or attached to that pride, because when that busyness is taken away, like I mentioned earlier, we can fall into shame. So we try and hold on to that busyness for as long as we can because it gives us such a strong sense of self-worth. Okay, so the third concept I feel that we are ready to talk about now is that if busyness is a state, which we have learned from urgency culture, then doesn't it mean that we have the power to transform it? And here is the great news. Yes, we do. We are powerful beings. We quite often may stay stuck in emotional patterns because we can't remember how to transform that energy. And the reason that I say can't remember is because we once knew. We once knew how to move between states by transforming the energy. And when I say energy in this context, I'm talking about the energy of busyness, the energy of stress, the energy of anxiety, because we have forgotten. That's why I say to unlearn, to remember, because we have forgotten how to change our state. And as an example, I would really love to share with you, which really opened my eyes, is I'd like you to think about kids in play school or kindergarten for my US listeners. Not even sure if I've got any US listeners, but that felt really good to say. I think, I want you to think of a situation where there are kids happily playing in play school or kindergarten, and let's say one kid called Susan hits another kid called Kenny. And Susan's really angry because she just feels this really antsy, angry energy. And Kenny is in a state of feeling really sad because he's just been hit. The kids feel the feelings, and then 2 minutes later, they're cuddling and holding hands, demonstrating forgiveness. When we were little Susan or little Kenny, we just knew how to move through these emotions. We knew how to get hurt and then bounce back to forgiveness. And we knew how to move through stress and busyness, and how to forgive and how to love after feeling that sadness or feeling angry. But what's happened as we've grown up is we've started to learn off the adults that we need to hold on to the emotion and suppress it. And it's not the fault of the adult because they were never taught. And along the way, us and the adults, we have lost our authentic, playful self. So I always say emotional health is a letting go. It's a remembering, it's coming back to being that kid in play school who can move through these emotions and unlearn these patterns that hold us. So we can remember how to let go of our busyness without needing to change anything on the outside. And this is exactly what I teach my clients, is how to measure their state, how to move through it, to remember their most authentic self before we started to learn how to attach to these emotions. Okay, so the fourth thing I want to talk about is, when is the best time to learn about not being stressed and busy? And again, we live in this paradoxical universe, because at the same time, when we want to learn how to change our state from busyness to peaceful, ironically, the best time to learn is when we're stressed and busy, right? When we're in that state, because it's likely that you'll come in and out of this pattern for life. Maybe you are stressed and busy, and then maybe you wait for a holiday where you feel peaceful, and then you come back, and because you've not done any work, then you reattach onto this stress and busyness. And there's this never ending loop of busyness, peaceful, busyness, peaceful. And this ties really well into another analogy. And if you guys listen to this podcast, you will learn that I love analogies. And this is the analogy of, you can't heal on an island, which is exactly what I've tried to do. Every time I've gone traveling, I've gone away, and I felt like this healed, awoken priestess. And then I come back to my reality, which is that I still carry these patterns of busyness, this feeling of busyness, because when I come back from the island to the mainland, literally every time I realize that the true healing needs to be done from within. And sometimes we need to face the fact that we're always going to be busy, and life is always going to throw this at us. And it's likely for us that if we've always been in this busy state, then it actually feels safe for us to be there. So it's likely on a subconscious level that we are seeking out this busyness. When is the next trip? When is the next project? Because your state creates your story. If you are in a state of busyness, that is what will happen within our reality. If we are vibrating at this busyness, at this hecticness, that is exactly what we're going to attract. It's very similar to if we're in a state of worry, and if we're constantly scared and anxious, then those are the sort of things that we will attract. When we are in a state of busyness, we're always going to find something more important to do, and we will live in this constantly busy life, which is absolutely fine. I'm not here to tell you that you need to start doing anything differently. It's your life and it's your choice. But it's really important for me as a coach, and it's my responsibility to show us that sometimes we can realize that we've not created any time. We've not created any time for balance, any time for connection, for the people that we love, the people that we live with. We've not created time to be in the present moment, to be in our rest and our digest and our healing, which is ultimately what we're all here for. And one thing that woke me up from my emotional patterns of busyness, in fact, I would love it if everyone could do this right now, and to check the screen time on their phone. How much time are you spending on your phone? And is there any opportunity to reallocate a small part of your human experience to you? To you to then be there for others? And it's so funny because quite often I will hear myself say, I'm too busy to work on my emotional health. And what I always ask myself back is, do I know how much time that I need to dedicate to it? So, like, a really good example in my program is, sometimes the thought can come up for potential clients where they say they don't have the time to do it, without even knowing how much time is needed for it, because the program, it really doesn't take that long. We are learning how to let go in that moment of trigger. And when I then explain how long it takes in my program, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, that story of busyness goes completely out of the window. But the point is, our minds are so attached to this busyness, it will always come up with that as a reason to do things which may actually be less healthy. And this thought of being busyness attaches to itself in the story before even coming curious about the facts. And there's no shame in this at all. It's just, it's really fascinating to be an observer of these thoughts when they come up. Okay, beautiful people, I feel like this is a really nice, natural place to wrap up, and it's summary time. So the question we set to answer at the beginning of this podcast is how being busy is keeping you stressed and anxious. So today together we explored some of those concepts, some information about busyness, and the first was around urgency culture, around expectation, around constantly trying to live up to this mark that has been, made up for us. And as long as we are trying to run towards matching this unrealistic expectation, we will never be free. So we can always really anchor into our intention and understanding that things take time and things, are a process. The second thing that we touched on was understanding that busyness is a state and we can transform that, and not buying into the story that, we're always busy and we never have time, because we can quite clearly see that when we look at high performing people who do a million things in a day, they just don't have that busyness feeling. And, we can subconsciously attach onto busyness as part of our pride and as part of our self-worth. So there can be a lot of fear in not being busy. Thirdly, just that, we have the power to transform this state. We are powerful beings. I will say this so many times throughout these episodes. And we can quite clearly see that when we look at kids at play school or kindergarten who effortlessly flow through their states and their emotions. And lastly, the best time to learn how to change your state is usually when you're in that state. So, you are equipped with the skills to use them on the mainland, to use them the next time life throws busy at you. Now, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, if you feel like you got some ideas or newfound inspiration, well, there's a lot more where that came from. And where you'll learn to implement all of this is in my one-to-one 6-week to inner peace program, where I just guide you on the most beautiful journey. I personally hold your virtual hand all the way through the highs and the lows, where you learn how to shift your inner state. You learn how to move through your emotions, to stop being stuck in this loop without having to, explain to me all of your past, without needing to think your way out of feelings. At this point in time, my program is a one-to-one journey, and I will be excited in the future to be moving towards a group program. So that means at the time of recording this podcast, 6 weeks to inner peace is the lowest price it will ever be, because it's a deeply and personal transformative program. I have limited capacity for how many clients I can hold, and I like to be very true to myself in how many people I can hold, so I don't get stuck in that busyness loop. So, if this episode did really relate to you, if you did get a lot of inspiration from it, if you wanted to learn more about the program, I would love to hear about it. And I do recommend that you slide into my DMs, because I don't let everybody into the program. And it's really important for you and me to make sure that this is a good fit for you. And I recognize it's really important for you to invest your energy into something that supports you and something that brings you directionally towards being your most fulfilled self. So you can find me on my Instagram page at Emotional Health School. And if you send me the words for this episode, which is podcast busy, then I know exactly what episode you have listened to. Or if you just want to binge all of the rest of the episodes, that's absolutely fine by me too. I'm so grateful to have you here on part of this journey. And, I'm just one happy bunny to have the opportunity to speak to you like this. Okay, thanks for checking me out and sending my love as always, and I'll see you in the next episode.